Hey there, grade four. So we are going to do the big reveal for our social studies um, artifacts. So I wanted to just give the opportunity to take a look at the guesses, and you guys had some really, really creative and thoughtful ideas here about what these artifacts were. So the first artifact that we looked at was this thing here, this stick thing. And these are some of the guesses that people had. A lot of people thought it was some sort of noise maker, either for this calling animals, a battle horn. People said a whistle or a flute, baton or a flute, an animal collar, another guess for whistle. So there's quite a lot of people thought, well, there's one hole here and there's one hole here. It makes complete sense that it would be blown through, something going to be traveling through this stick. So that actually does sort of make sense. Similarly, these people thought a spyglass is basically a very old telescope. So one person said spyglass, one person said very old telescope. The idea you're looking through it to see objects that are far away. Maybe the lens has gone missing. So that's an excellent guess. It's some sort of staff. One person said it did look like a honeycomb, and I can sort of see that as well. Well, the trick or the clue to this is actually these grooves, these lines here, which show that something was wound around this, and these lines were there to keep that something in place. This is actually a spindle. A spindle is something that would be used in a loom or some sort of garment factory, and thread would be put around the spindle, like huge amounts of thread for someone who was sewing something. So that's probably around the sort of early 20th century, maybe 1800s. But that's what that is, a spindle. So lots of great guesses. Nobody got it right, but still excellent guesses. And part of this activity is not whether you get it right or not. It's whether you're thinking like a historian. Did you think about what the markings were? And a lot of you saw that you could see right through this, and you made good guesses for that reason. So it's really looking at, based on what you're looking at, what could that thing be? And these are excellent guesses. So don't worry too much about whether you got it right or not, because some of these you've never seen before. All right, so the number two here was this metal box thing, and I only had three different guesses. Cleaner, someone thought it was a cleaner, someone thought it was a toaster, and someone thought it was some sort of heater. And I think probably most of you believed that because of the plug here, it's an electric appliance. And so these guesses suggest that something could be put inside it and either cooked or cleaned. And that sort of makes sense. And in fact, good guess. This is, in fact, the toaster. Believe it or not, toast didn't get toasted on both sides when it in the early 20th century. You put the toast in, you close the door. Halfway through, you open this door very carefully because the door would be hot, and flip the toast over, and then close the door again, and then we get toasted on the other side. This thing actually still works, even though I'm not brave enough to plug it in. I'm going to electrocute myself. But that's what that is, a toaster. So some thoughtful ideas there. This was the most challenging one, I think, because it's so bizarre. And this item is from the early 20th century, so like 1910, maybe 1905, 1910. And these are the guesses people had, and most of them because of the lenses, which makes complete sense. You could see that those lenses, when I showed you those lenses, you could see that there was some sort of bent glass in there. There was some sort of magnification of some sort. And I think that's why we got most of these guesses. So binoculars, goggles, a microscope of some sort, a magnifying glass. This is a very creative guess. A crossbow scope. So you know what a scope is, you put it on top when you're firing through. And stereoscope is one of the guesses that somebody had. And I think probably nobody really knows what a stereoscope is, but I think this was Caleb maybe said that his grandpa had told him that this is what it was. And in fact, that's what it is, a stereoscope. So a stereoscope is sort of like, if you've ever seen like a Disney viewfinder, it's like a way of looking through something to see something in three dimensions. So what would happen is this little piece of wood here with these little brackets, a picture would go in there. and the picture would actually be duplicated, be a double picture, a picture on this side and a picture on this side. That would be the same picture, but this dividing thing here would prevent your eyes from crossing over. So each eye only saw one of the pictures, and you would move this bar in and out until the picture came into focus as you looked through, and then this picture would look three-dimensional. So it was basically an old style. You can still buy these in antique stores. You get a whole bunch of pictures. After World War I, they were actually popular because it would show battlefield pictures. So you could actually look at the battlefield pictures, which would be pretty interesting for veterans coming back from World War I to see battle pictures in three dimensions. Anyway, so stereoscope. So this one, some great guesses here. So you can see it's got that little handle, it's got the hook on the end. So people thought, a lot of people tied it, sort of looked at sort of tightening stuff like shoelaces. Skate lace tightener was a good one that like a few people said. I think a dental tool. It does look like a dental tool. A mining tool. I could totally see that working. A loom needle. So a needle and a knitting tool is very similar. So the idea is that you would hook yarn or thread on here. Someone suggested some sort of hook for doing that sort of thing. And someone thought maybe it looked like some sort of a screwdriver tool that would be put inside something to turn it. This is, in fact, a shoelace tightener. So this is early 20th century. People used to have big boots with lots of big long laces, and it was tricky to tighten those, bending over to tighten them. So this was basically a way of tightening laces for anything that had laces, not necessarily just shoes, but anything that might have laces. This was used to tighten them. So that just gives you a good idea. Great job. Creative ideas and very thoughtful ideas. Like I said, don't worry too much if you didn't get them right. It's really examining these artifacts. These are called primary sources. These are things that actually existed 100 years ago, and it gives us a little glimpse into what life was like 100 years ago. Because otherwise, we wouldn't really. Textbooks tell us a little, but it's much more interesting to actually see stuff that existed back then to give us an idea of what people actually lived like. And so all of these things just gives you a little idea of what people's lifestyle was, and it was just sort of my way of introducing social studies, because we're going to be looking at in ancient civilizations, we're going to be looking at a lot of pictures, not actual things, but pictures of artifacts from thousands of years ago that we've managed to preserve, and we get a lot of information about what civilizations were like thousands of years ago based on these artifacts. So that's social studies, and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.